For the torso of this character, we're actually going to be doing the same thing as we've been doing with the rest of the body, and that is giving him kind of a special pose to bring out where we're losing volume and where the deformation is starting to look funny. So when we do sort of these extreme poses, like him bending over backwards like this, we start to see some deformation here that's not quite right. So like his belt here is looking a little funny. It's starting to get pulled and pushed in weird ways, and that's causing it to lose its form. And other than that, it looks like the bind did a pretty good job handling this part of the mesh. I'm not seeing a whole lot of clipping with the shirt and the underlying geometry. If we look on the other side, however, we do see some funny stuff going on there. And that's just because we haven't mirrored our adjustments that we've made on this side yet. And we can do that at a later time once we're finished adjusting the weights on this side. Because then we can just mirror everything at once and it'll all work out nice and fine. Another thing you might want to do is some side-to-side movement to make sure that things are looking good there. And again, it looks like it's holding up pretty well. Just this belt of his holding his pauldron on is losing some form there. So that's not too bad. And another thing I want to check is his crotch area here. As I push down, you can see that something is holding his crotch in the same place. And I believe that's actually the root joint here. So there's some root weight there that we probably just want to remove altogether. So I might want to handle that first just because it's the most obvious thing that's wrong with this right now. Looks very weird. And there's a couple ways we can paint these away by removing the influences with the paint weights tool, or we can use our trusty component editor. And I think I'm going to try the component editor just because that's normally a little easier and a little quicker. So I'm going to move it so it's weird. Move it into a weird position so it looks very weird. And then I'm just going to select the geometry with the face selection and put that into a vertex selection by holding Control and right-clicking and dragging over into vertices to confirm. Then we go back up to Window and we go to General Editors, and then here's Component Editor. And here we'll find all the influences on those pants, and we want to find the weird one, which is I think the root joint here. So I'll scan through here and I found the root joint right here. I'm just going to make this 0 by selecting all of these and hitting 0. And look at that, on the other side, it looks normal again. He's got his crotch back. So we can all be happy about that. That looks a little better than it was. There's still some funny business going on up there. But that part is at least solved. So now when we move, he maintains his crotch, and that's always important. So I'm going to put this controller back by going into the channel box and making the transform 0 again. And then I'm going to go back to his spine and make him do the limbo again because we know that there's some funny business going on there. And now I'll click on his mesh, and this time I am going to use the paint weights tool. So I'll double click on that to bring open the properties. And I'll scroll until we start seeing where these vertexes are being pulled from. So there might be some pelvis stuff still interacting with that up there, and we probably don't want that. So while we're here, we can remove that. I'm just going to hold Control and remove some of those weights and see how that brings the belt back up to where it might belong. Just kind of fixing a little at a time here because this is part of the problem. There's a lot of different joints pulling and pushing this part of the geometry with the weights that they have. So that takes care of that at least. We have some left hip joint controlling there for some reason. So we probably want to remove that. So I'll hold Control and click on that. And I'm going to keep going through the list. There's probably some really weird ones. So we have spine 3, which is actually kind of his center area here, his solar plexus. Some of that is pulling this part of the belt, so I'm going to remove that. I don't think that's necessary. And we got a little bit down here I don't think is needed either. And we want to find a kind of a balance between all these different spines because they're all going to be sharing these vertex weights here. So let's do something a little bold. Let's pick a spine. I'm going to use, let me pick this, see what one it is. This is checking the channel box. This is the spine 3. Let's just, for experiment's sake, make this entire thing spine 3 controlled. We'll see what that looks like. So I'm just going to click on it, double click on the faces, and then I'm going to hold Control and right click and go to vertices selection again. And then I'll go back to the component editor in the general editors, component editor, and I'll find spine 3. There it is. And we're just going to make this 1. It's all just going to be 1. We'll see what that looks like. Maybe it looks better, maybe it doesn't. Let's see. Move this. I think that's going to be a better solution for us. So let's grab his spines again. They're all kind of tucked away in here. Make sure these are set to 0, so we're back to normal. And then I'm going to give him a little bend. just to see. That looks okay. Yeah, I think that looks good. So that's all weighted on joint 3, this whole portion of the belt. So I think that is going to be a good solution for us. Now we have a little bit of funny business going on over here with the rest of the belt, and maybe we can get by doing the same thing. Maybe we can weight it all on spine 3 as well. So let's give that a try. I'm going to grab this little notch that he has in the belt as well, because that's part of it. Then I'm going to go to vertex selection, go back to my component editor, and I'll choose, you know what, maybe we should have done the chest actually. Let's try that instead, because it kind of is resting on the chest area right now. So we'll try the chest. We'll see what that looks like. So I'll unlimbo him so we can see what's going on. Just set these transforms back to 0 and give him a bend again. And I think that's going to work pretty good for us. Nothing's being pulled or pushed in any weird ways. Those belts are just going to stay stationary. And let's see if side to side looks okay. Looks all right. The only thing that's going to be a problem is now when he moves his clavicle, nothing is going to happen. The thing's going to stay there. So what we want to do is move his clavicle forward and paint these weights into place so that they look good. So we can use the component editor again as well if we want to select all these faces. So let's do that. I think that'll be quicker for now. I'm going to select the faces and I'm going to go into isolation mode, isolation selection, and that's up here in the viewport. And then I'm just going to grab kind of the relevant area here, which I think are these polygons here. Then I'll leave isolation selection mode, and then I'll go into vertex selection mode by using Control and right click and dragging over to vertex selection. And then now we'll go back to our component editor, and we can see that it's completely weighted to the chest like we set. So we can go to options, hide 0 columns, we want to uncheck that. And now we want to find the right clavicle in this huge list. So luckily everything seems to be organized by half, so we can find the right here, right clav. And I'm just going to weight this to 1, just to give it all its weight there. And now if I close that, you'll see that portion has now been sucked away and is underneath where the clavicle is being controlled. So that's good, but we need to blend this a little bit better. So let's go into our Paint Skin Weights tool. So I'm going to go to Object Mode and click on the Paint Skin Weights tool and close the channel box because it's taking up too much space. And then we can find the clavicle, the right clavicle, because that's kind of the area that we want to influence. And we're going to add influence to that. So in the hierarchy, right clavicle, and we can see what we've done. Essentially, we've made all this white. So we kind of want to blend this area, and to do it in a little more of an organized way, I'm actually going to control the exact value here. I'm just going to make this 0.5 because I want to divide these values in half. And I'm going to use the solid brush so I don't get any bleeding or blending or anything, because I kind of want this to be precise. So by painting in there, we can start to see that's now stretching to where we want it to be. That's looking a little better. And we're getting some mesh clipping here from the other part of the belt, which is weighted to the 3rd spine joint. So we probably want to add a little bit of influence there just to hide that. So now that's being pulled as well. And then we can divide our value again. So I'm going to do 0.3 and add, I'll use a soft brush. I don't know. I'll add a little bit of stretching there in that portion of the belt. And that way it looks a little more organic. So there, I think that's all right. He's never going to stick his clavicle out this far. If you try to move your clavicle yourself, it really only moves a few inches. It doesn't move. This is like 3 feet it's moved. So that's a little ridiculous, but at least now we know that we're getting a good stretch here.